Welcome back to Kumba Hineni, a podcast on intersectionality, more than just getting deep. I'm your host, Enzi, and this week, y'all, we're actually going to be chatting about the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, particularly about their waiver. But first, a word from our sponsors. This podcast is supported by the Newman School at the Talmud Torah of St. Paul, where academic excellence and Jewish values meet, teaching analytical and critical thinking skills that are necessary to thrive in a complex world. Now enrolling grades K through 5. Learn more at ttsp.org/Newman. All right, y'all. Like I said, we are going to be talking a little bit about the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, and particularly about the Public Service Loan waiver that President Biden announced October 6th, 2021. Now, the reason why I want to talk about this is several reasons, but the main reason is even though this ruling or waiver was announced October 6, 2021, I didn't process that information until very recently. And I want to name that particularly as we think about intersections and how the ways in which who we are impacts how we understand the world, as well as impact perhaps sometimes what benefits we are able to receive and not receive. And so one of the things that I'm mindful of is paperwork is really difficult for me. Paperwork is difficult for many of us and for many different reasons. And for me, as a neurodivergent person, for me as a person with nonverbal learning disabilities and adding to not really knowing when all the time to ask questions, I didn't realize when I maybe read or heard about the waiver that the waiver would actually have an impact on me. I had no clue. And so fast forward to now, I recently, after the last report came out about folks receiving time or months counted for having ongoing forbearances in the program, that's when I actually looked back at the waiver. And so first I want to start off by going over what that waiver is. And so on October 6, 2021, the U.S. Department of Education announced a change to the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program rules for a limited time as a result of the COVID-19 emergency. Throughout the emergency, the ED has provided a variety of benefits to borrowers. Now, for a limited time, borrowers may receive credit for past periods of repayments that would have otherwise not qualified for the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. This is important for several reasons. One, the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program started in 2007. I have been working in nonprofits, particularly in public service, since 2007, 2006 actually, but 2007. And one of the qualifications for the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program is you have to consolidate all your loans. And the loans didn't start at that time, the payments, until after you consolidated. And so I consolidated my loans in 2015. So what that meant is instead of being close to finished in 2017, 2018, it meant that I would not qualify until 2025. Now, with the changes, it shifts things a little bit. And like I said, this is going to be a very informative episode. I really want the information to get out there. I want more folks to know about this so that way we can all benefit in many different ways. So here are a few key points to the summary change. So for a limited time, you might receive credit for past periods of repayment on loans that would have otherwise not qualified for PSLF. Now, you still have to be with a qualifying employer. That's still a requirement. If you have had federal family education program loans, Perkins, or other federal student loans, you'll need to consolidate your loans into a direct consolidation loan to qualify for public service loan forgiveness, both in general and under the waiver. Before consolidating, make sure to check to see if your work is a qualifying employer. And that's the important piece, making sure that your work is a qualifying employer. And the next point, past periods of repayment will now count whether or not you made that payment on time, for the full amount due, or on a qualifying repayment plan. I'm going to read that again. Past periods of repayment will now count whether or not you made that payment on time, for the full amount due, or on a qualifying repayment plan. And then periods of deferment or forbearance and periods of default still do not count or qualify. I am not going to include information about the most recent report, I believe that came out on April 19th, because I don't have enough details to look at that. So here's what the new rules are. The new rules for qualifying payments. Under the temporary rules, any prior period of repayment will count as a qualifying payment, regardless of loan program, regardless of repayment plan, or whether the payment was made in full or on time. But you do continue to need a qualifying employer. So you do continue to need qualifying employment. This change will apply to borrowers with direct loans, those who have already consolidated into direct loan programs, and those who consolidated into direct loan programs, by October 31st, 2022. Period of repayments on Parent Plus loans are not legible under the limited PSLF waiver. So, I know that was a lot of information, and I wanted to share that because I did not know about this, even though it's been out there. And so, one, naming that as we think about, I really want to speak for myself, and thinking about student loans, and thinking about really how there's a number of folks who are locked into this, or who have felt locked and trapped into this debt of student loans, where people who couldn't qualify for a credit card at the age of 18 all of a sudden was qualified to sign off on a $100,000 loan, on a $15,000 loan, on a $20,000 loan. Before you can even rent a vehicle, we can sign off on such large debts. And really, this opportunity allows for a little bit of freedom. I realized early on, but really this year, as I was thinking about my loans and how, where they're at, really realizing that for myself and maybe for plenty of other folks, that our student loans is more than our mortgage, and sometimes well over that amount. And really thinking about how we make progress in many different ways, and also wanting to name, thinking about the Shmita year, and thinking about, as well as how we look at debt in Judaism. 10 years is a long time. It's not and naming that what I'm getting at is naming that this feels possible. It feels like a potential life-altering, life-changing things for many of us. And so I just really hope for those folks who have been in a program, who've been in qualified employers, to really be sure to look into it. And so here's, again, these are the basic requirements that have not changed. you have to make 121 qualifying payments or the equivalent. And that's an assumption of 10 years of payments. Being employed by government, 501c3 nonprofit, or other not-for-profit organizations that provide a qualifying service. Having direct loans or consolidated into direct consolidated loans. And then certifying qualifying employment for the past periods you seek credit toward public service loan forgiveness. And it is just a really amazing opportunity. And I know I've spoken to many people over the years who have wanted to do different things, have wanted to experiment with being self-employed, or wanted to do other type of for-profit work even, but have been feeling trapped because wanting to be able to get their student loans taken care of. So really excited about some of these changes that's happening, and really looking forward to hopefully more of us finding out information like this. I will try as best as I can, especially when things like this, when I find out information that I feel like we need to know, I will try to bring it to our attention, because there's a lot that we often don't talk about, particularly when we think about economic privileges, as we think about the ways in which credit happens or doesn't happen, realizing that there is a potential path that leads to freedom. Kumba Hineni, a podcast on intersectionality, more than just getting deep, is a part of the Jew Folk Podcast Network, a product of Jew Folk Inc. You can email the show at podcast@tcjewfolk.com. For more information, go to tcjewfolk.com/podcast.